Country music stars Patsy Cline, 30. Cowboy Copas, 49. Hawkshaw Hawkins, 41. Board a small single-engine airplane after performing a benefit concert.
Crazy, I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. I'm crazy.
On March 3, 1963, country music legend Patsy Cline performed a benefit at the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall in Kansas City, Kansas, for the family of a well-known disc jockey, Cactus Jack Call, who had died in an automobile crash a little over a month earlier. Despite being sick with a cold and reworking her busy schedule, Cline made it to the benefit concert, giving 3 performances. Many country artists performed at that same benefit, including George Jones, Dottie West, Billy Walker, as well as Lloyd Copas, known by his stage name as Cowboy Copas, and Harold Hawkins, known as Hawkshaw Hawkins. Patsy and Hawkshaw, in particular, were reluctant to perform this benefit, with Patsy being exhausted and eager to return home after spending much of the past year doing 4 shows every day in Las Vegas, and Hawkshaw having a baby at home and his wife 8 months pregnant. Also at the benefit was Randy Hughes. Randy was a well-known session guitar player for several country artists, including Cowboy Copas, and also married Cowboy's daughter Kathy. He eventually went into managing artists, and in 1959, Patsy became one of his clients. After taking basic flying lessons, he purchased a single-engine Yellow Piper PA-24 Comanche private plane. Randy thought purchasing the plane would be an advantage for his clients, since they would arrive faster to their events instead of traveling by car. After all the artists had performed the charity concert, artist Billy Walker received an urgent call to return back to Nashville. So on March 4th, Billy planned to fly back to Nashville on Randy's plane. Artist Hawkshaw had already booked a commercial flight to return home the same morning. So knowing the commercial flight would get Billy home faster, Hawkshaw gave Billy his airline ticket and agreed to fly with Randy, Patsy, and Cowboy on Randy's plane back to Nashville. Artist Dottie West was driving back to Nashville, which was about a 16-hour drive. Worried about her friend flying in the bad weather, Dottie asked Patsy to ride along with her and her husband instead of flying, but Patsy politely refused, saying, "Don't worry about me, hoss. When it's my time to go, it's my time." So Patsy spent the night at the Townhouse Motor Hotel after the concert. The following morning, on March 4th, Patsy went to the Fairfax airport. However, all the planes were grounded due to the heavy fog and returned back to the Townhouse Motor Hotel. On March 5th, Patsy called her mother from the hotel and checked out at 12:30 p.m. and traveled a short distance back to the Fairfax airport, and then boarded Randy's private plane. The final boarding of the small 4-seat private aircraft was country music stars Patsy Cline, Cowboy Copas, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and pilot Randy Hughes. Although Patsy Cline was experiencing the most recent rise in fame and popularity, she wasn't necessarily the biggest country star at the time. Cowboy Copas was a country music star who had been popular since the 1940s and gained fame in 1943 when he became the vocalist for a band on the Grand Ole Opry. Cowboy had solo hits in the 1940s and early 50s, with his biggest hit in 1960 Alabama, which remained #1 for 3 months. Hawkshaw Hawkins was also a popular country music star in the 1950s and 60s. His music career started in 1943, however it was paused while he joined the Army fighting in World War II. After the war, he returned to music full-time, and in 1946, his next 2 records would be top 10 country hits. He later joined the Grand Ole Opry and recorded his biggest hit, Lonesome 7 7203. With everyone on board, the private airplane left Fairfax Airport despite warnings not to fly in the bad weather, but safely landed at Rogers Municipal Airport in Rogers, Arkansas. Randy refueled the plane and then proceeded to DYERSBURG Municipal Airport in Dyersburg, Tennessee. The plane arrived shortly after 5:05 p.m. to obtain a weather briefing Randy needed before flying the remaining 174 miles to the final destination at Cornelia Ford Air Park in Nashville, Tennessee. Randy headed to the flight service station while Patsy, Hawkshaw, and Cowboy all went to the airport restaurant. Randy then requested the weather briefing from the FAA personnel, Leroy Neal, who advised him conditions were marginal for visual flight. Randy was qualified to fly under conditions in which it was possible to navigate by sight, rather than solely relying on instruments only, which is known as Visual Flight Rules, or VFR. Randy stated he was familiar with the terrain and the obstructions along the route. Leroy reminded Randy that darkness would come early due to the cloudiness. Randy understood and confirmed that the DYERSBURG runways were lighted at night, just in case he had to return. Randy then went to the airport restaurant and discussed the matter with Patsy, Hawkshaw, and Cowboy. To inform them, he had decided to continue the flight to Nashville. Then Randy spoke to the airport manager, William Brazy, who suggested that they stay the night because of the high winds and inclement weather. He reminded Randy he'd be flying over areas with no lights, be invisible for VFR flying, and offered them free rooms and meals. Randy stated when he made it to the Tennessee River, he'd be familiar with the terrain and would have no trouble beyond that point. Randy told both William Brazy and Leroy Neal he would attempt the flight but would return for the night if the weather worsened, saying, "I've already come this far, we'll be there before you know it." Randy would then call his wife, asking her about the weather in Nashville. Randy's wife said it stopped raining with the sun starting to set. Randy asked his wife to call Cornelia Ford Air Park and have the airport lights turned on, and told his wife we're going to be there in about an hour. About 10 minutes before takeoff, William Brazy overheard Patsy say to the pilot Randy, "If you want to stay, we will stay. And if you want to go, we'll go." But Randy remained adamant that he could get them all home safely. William Brazy saw Patsy Cline board first into the rear left seat of the plane, followed by Hawkins taking the seat next to Patsy. Randy took the pilot's position and Cowboy boarded last, taking the front right passenger seat. The engine started and they sat there for about 3 or 4 minutes while Randy received another weather briefing by radio.
Heavy precipitation, 12 o'clock, 20 miles, extends north.
And then the yellow Piper Comanche taxied into position and took off at 6:07 p.m., heading to its final destination, to Cornelia Ford Air Park in Nashville, Tennessee. After takeoff, no further radio contact was made with the aircraft. The reported weather at that time would not allow Randy to climb above 500 feet with visibility of 5 miles, being 43 degrees Fahrenheit with gusty turbulent winds and cloudy.
Crazy, I'm crazy for feeling so lonely.
Ladies and gentlemen, in all my 30 years on radio, this is the hardest job I have ever had to do. And it pains me greatly to announce that Patsy Cline, Hawkshaw Hawkins, Cowboy Copas, and Randy Hughes, flying from Kansas City to Nashville, have crashed in the area of Camden, Tennessee after an all-night search involving bad weather, violent weather. The plane has finally been located and all aboard have perished.
The crash occurred approximately 90 miles from its Nashville destination in a wooded, swampy area outside of Camden, Tennessee. Forensic examination confirmed that the aircraft was destroyed on impact, and all 4 perished instantly. Patsy Cline's wristwatch would be recovered at the crash location, which had stopped at 6:20 p.m. on Tuesday, March 5th, 1963. Earlier the next morning, musician and friend Roger Miller went searching after learning that the flight had never made it to Nashville. Roger would be one of the first to find the wreckage at about 6:10 a.m., about 5 miles west of the Tennessee River. Investigators believe that Randy entered an area of deteriorating weather with low visibility and lost his visual reference with the ground, causing spatial disorientation. Spatial disorientation is defined as the inability of a pilot to correctly interpret the aircraft attitude, altitude, or airspeed in relation to the Earth or other points of reference, which ultimately led to what is known as a graveyard spiral, with the aircraft entering into a right-hand diving turn with the nose down. When the aircraft cleared the clouds, Randy had attempted to correct the high descent rate by pulling the nose up and applying full power, but it was too late. The FAA investigators later found evidence that the propeller was at maximum speed, and parts of the yellow plane were scattered over a 60-yard area. The plane struck a large tree before hitting the ground, with pieces of the aircraft hanging in the tree, and a 3-foot hole marked the spot where the main part of the fuselage impacted the ground. The FAA's final conclusion was that the non-instrument rated pilot attempted visual flight in adverse weather conditions, resulting in disorientation and subsequent loss of control. Randy had a total flight time of 160.2 hours, including 44.25 logged in the Piper Comanche. There was no evidence of pre-impact failure or malfunction. Post-mortem examination of pilot Randy Hughes disclosed nothing that could have been a factor in the accident. Patsy Cline, born Virginia Patterson Hensley in 1932, a country music vocalist that would become one of the most influential vocalists of the 20th century. At the age of 14, she landed her first singing gig, and by 1952, she was performing regularly at the local venues and clubs. In 1953, she met and married Gerald Cline, who suggested to take on the name Patsy, being a homage to her middle name. In 1954, she signed her first record contract, recording 4 records and the hit song Walkin After Midnight. Patsy's breakout performance was in 1957 on the CBS show Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, with performing her song Walkin After Midnight, which helped her win the contest and became her breakthrough hit. The song is considered a country classic and was the first to cross over between country and pop, a first for a female country artist at the time, changing country music history. I Fall to Pieces also hit the top of the country and pop charts, followed by Crazy, released in 1961, becoming Patsy's biggest hit and is known as her signature song. Patsy Cline's star power could not be denied. She bought her dream house, earned her membership into the Grand Ole Opry, and had a residency at the Mint Casino and Hotel in Las Vegas, which was another first for a female country artist. A memorial marks the exact place in Camden, Tennessee where the plane crashed, having a boulder inscribed with all the names of the victims. Thousands attended Patsy's memorial service at the Shenandoah Memorial Park in her hometown of Winchester, Virginia. Hawkshaw, Cowboy, and Randy were all laid to rest in the Forest Lawn Memorial Gardens in Gutlettsville, Tennessee. Patsy Cline was only 30 at the time of her death, and nearly 6 decades later, her impact on music, history, and gender equality is still recognized. She posthumously received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award and was the first female solo artist to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Country music as a whole, along with so many of us who love these artists, suffered a massive loss, being commonly referred to as one of the country's music's darkest days. This video is dedicated in the memory of all the victims who were lost too soon to this horrible tragedy. Their lives, music, and legacies will never be forgotten.